All right, let's wrap up June, shall we? Hello everyone, welcome and welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is going to be a financial check-in on the month of June and also a reading wrap-up of the 7 books that I did complete in the month. A lot of good reads this month. One is carried over from May, and I'm glad that it's finished now, and that will be the first one that we talk about, and a couple of purchases that I've made. So this may be the last, no, maybe I'll just keep the book hauls in the wrap-ups because I'm not planning on buying that much more, although my goal for buying books is a little bit different this financial year. So we'll get the check-in for money done first. I spent $130 in the month of June, just a little bit over budget. I mean, the whole year is over budget, but in terms of what I wanted to spend each month, it was around $80, so we are 50 up from that. I've already spent that in July. No, I haven't. I lied. I have some pre-orders that haven't come out yet, therefore they do not count. But for the books that I purchased in the month of June, Gyo by Junji Ito was one of them, and I also read this one in the month, so we'll talk more about this later. I got The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez, I want to say, and that was like $1.50 or $2 on a sale, a Kindle sale. I also got the audiobook for By Blood, By Salt, which I did have on Kindle, but I am consuming audiobooks faster these days, and I would like to get to that sometime soon. It is currently in the running in the Champions League, so it took out Spiff Boten, and it's in the running for the Champions League at the moment, so excited to get to that one. I also picked up Thrill Switch by Tim Hawken, which I believe was pretty high up on SPSFC competition, but I'm in a cyberpunk era right now, reading it for a potential podcast episode down the track, so wanting to get some indie cyberpunk, so that one I picked up. I bit the bullet and picked up the Barclan series, which I don't know who it's written by, but this is definitely an influence from Faye over at Books and Chocoholic, so go ahead and check her out. I'll have her link down below. Okay, so the series is by C.M. Curley, and it starts with the Hummingbirds tier, and I believe it goes on to the Giant's Echo and the Hunchback's Sigh. I'm not sure what order the books are in, but I purchased that, and that was about $6. Rob Hayes sent out a tweet saying that he was giving away ebooks of his sci-fi cyberpunk novel called Drones, which was initially under a Vanity Press, I think, but something happened there, and then he was giving the ebook away, so I grabbed one of that. I was sent Hauler by Eric Kruger, which is a cyberpunk short novel, which I'm excited to get to because I'm in that era. I bought Tooth and Nail by Zachary and Joshua Forbes, which is the 3rd book in the Continuum series. I've enjoyed my time with that so far. It's high action, like mafia with zombies. It's pretty cool. And then I backed a Kickstarter for Dance With Me by Olivia J. Elliott, and I think that was about $80, but my memory's a little bit fuzzy there. It was either 60 or 80, so I've just put it at the higher. So those are all the things that I purchased in the month of June. I already bought some stuff in July, but we'll keep that for the next wrap up. In terms of overall update on my spend and then the goals for next year, I will do that in a separate video. Okay, which takes us to our reads. The first thing I finished in the month of June, because I did start in May, was War of the Flowers by Tad Williams. I will say, as much as I didn't like the main character in this one, his name is Theo Vilmos, I loved the writing. The writing and the world building and the magical elements of this book and this world were fantastic. If you're looking for a standalone and you'd like to get a taste of Tad Williams, by all means, this is an okay place to start. I have heard it is very different from the Memory of Sorrow and Thorn, so if you are fans of that and stands of that series, going into this may be a little bit jarring, but I didn't like Theo very much at all. Everything else I loved. Prose was great, world building was great, the other characters were pretty good. There was a couple in there I'm like, the storyline, the pacing lacked a little bit towards the middle and the end, but at the same time there was enough in here to keep me going. Easy to read for people who like prose and plot, and I enjoyed that myself. So I don't know where I sat on this one. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5, potentially a 3.5. I'm not going to read it again, but I'm glad that I did. And I think I'll go and send this one to my father-in-law because he is in a bit of a Tad Williams era right now. So I had a good time for what it was. In terms of plot, it gets pretty wild pretty quickly. So Theo Vilmos has had like a string of bad luck, and his like partner leaves him, his mother dies, and through all of that he finds this book from like a long lost uncle. He starts reading this book from the long lost uncle, and he's like, this is a little bit insane, what's going on here? And then some of those things from that book come to life, and we get pulled into a fantasy world which is a little bit topsy-turvy. So it's interesting. It's a semi-portal fantasy, semi-epic fantasy, I would say, if you like that kind of thing. But Theo, as a main character, didn't vibe with him. Everything else was pretty okay, pretty good. But Theo like knocked it down, a solid star. The next thing I read or I listened to was Tell Me What You Did by Carter Wilson. This is a thriller, and we're following, what was her name? Poe, who runs a podcast, a true crime podcast, where people are able to call in and confess their sins. So they're invited anonymously to confess the crimes that they committed. Someone calls into this podcast who says that they are the person who murdered Poe's mother. So that is slightly spoilery, but it's the basis of the book. And she goes, hang on a minute, you can't be the person who killed my mother because I killed the person who killed my mother. That's in the blurb, therefore not a spoiler in my books. It was fine if you like these kinds of books. I thought that, and I like rant about this over on June's vlog, I thought that it was easy to read, it was easy to follow, or easy to listen to, easy to follow. The decisions that the main character made were so dumb, putting herself into terrible situations, and by the end of it, I was like, just listening to it to finish it. I'm not a DNFer, really, of books. There are a very select handful of books that I have DNF'd in my time. I probably would have DNF'd this one if I hadn't like already been close to the end, because she started to shit me as a character. So I gave this one 3 stars because it was entertaining. I'll give it that. I am not gravitating towards this author again, which in some instances when I've read a 3-star thriller, I've gone, okay, well, I'll try something else from that particular person. Whereas this one, I'm like, if this is the vibe, it's probably not for me, and there are many other things that I would like to give my time to. So I read it. It was on my like anticipated release list this year. It was fine. Not rushing back. The next thing I picked up was Neuromancer by William Gibson. This was a mood read, and I read it because Ryan and I want to talk about cyberpunk at some point, and this is sort of where it all started. I think technically it started with Blade like 2 years earlier, but for better or for worse, this seems to be the benchmark for cyberpunk. There were problematic aspects to it if you're reading it. If you're reading it as a product of its time, it was very cool. It introduced new technologies like the Matrix, which the Matrix trilogy is based off of. It introduced the term flatlining, which we have had like more references to flatlining in terms of a cyberpunk as like era. That's the wrong word. Words. What are they? Which was cool. It was interesting to see where these concepts of like jacking in and jacking out to a technological other world was. I didn't love the writing, I didn't love the characters, I didn't love the plot, but I did think it was well worth seeing where this began if you were going to delve into other cyberpunk works. We are following, what's his name, Chase? We're going with Chase. Henry Dorset Chase, if my memory is serving correctly, who was doing, like, he's a cyber cowboy. He got done in for a smidge of, like, thievery, and his employers crippled him neurologically, so he was unable to work in cyberspace anymore. He gets a mysterious new employer who says, hey, I can fix all this damage to your internal organs and allow you back into cyberspace if you do this job for me. The job consists of connecting a couple of, well, I don't think the job consists of it, but it goes down the route of connecting 2 very powerful AIs. And there's a bunch of other characters in there. So did I retain a whole lot from it? Not really outside of that, but I'm glad to see to have experienced where it all started. I may continue on with this trilogy just because I'm morbidly curious about where the story goes, and it did end on a cliffhanger with one of the characters, Molly, which was probably my favorite character in this book, but I'm still unsure. So I read that one, again, glad I read it, nothing to write home about for me personally. The next thing I read, or consumed, I guess, was Gyo. This is a manga. It's my first manga. Not a manga guy. Not an animation guy, not a manga guy, but I do really enjoy the absurdity of Junji Ito's imagination, and the artwork in here it's next level. So this had a shark in it, and the reason I bought this was because Black Milk, who is a clothing company, had a t-shirt based on the artwork in this manga, which was a shark. And I was like, well, gotta have that. And it was on sale when I went and got it. This is a story of Kaori and her boyfriend, who she can't deal with bad smells. And one day she's like complaining because of the smell in their apartment or their holiday location that is so bad she can't stand it. And it ends up being this like fish on mechanical legs. Turns out that a whole bunch of marine life have been subject to like dumped experiments from a war, and they're all on these like stilt things, and now they're taking over the world. That is really all I can say. It's as absurd as it sounds, but it was a bit of fun. What actually stood out to me about this one wasn't Gyo. It was actually one of the short stories in the back, which was about this, think the Grand Canyon, like think this massive rock. In this rock, everyone's silhouette has been carved out, and it's to your proportions to your body, and people are drawn to them to try and find their own, and then they walk into them and they die because they're so drawn to these silhouettes, these cutouts of their body. And they go, and I fit here, and then they just walk into them. That was chilling, and it was like 30 pages. And I'm still thinking about that particular one. So this was interesting. I would like to read some more Junji Ito, or more, I guess, standalone or short manga rather than like huge series. So if you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments down below. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to give this one to my dad, see if he enjoys it, because he likes that sort of thing. The next one that I read, and probably my favourite read of the month, it was a 5-star for me, was Only a Grave Will Do. This is by James Lloyd Doolan, and it is the conclusion to the Malatu series. This was so good, and I can't really talk about it too much because it's full of spoilers at this point. The story of Malatu follows Kalo, and Tayen. Kalo was a hero, but also someone who is seen on the other end of that as being an enemy of a particular group of people. This story is very much about colonization and the effects of that, and this third installment we followed Kalo's story from when he was a young boy. It's told in 2 timelines, one present, one in Kalo's past. What is his name? Kalo. Kaylo. And it connects, and we have this huge consequence-filled battle that we're leading up to in this third book. We see this man grow over 3 books, and we're so emotionally invested in Kalo as he gets to this point. We see the reasons behind what he's done for his whole life. We see this angry adolescent boy who just wants to fight back and to take his land from the Ghaust or the enemy. We see someone who is so shattered by the consequences of those choices that he decides to become a recluse. And he sees another young person come into it, which is Tayen, our second main protagonist, who is just as angry as he was as a kid, and trying to navigate those circumstances while also still fundamentally believing in fighting for his land, fighting for his people, being scared of the consequences, being disheartened at the reception of his actions thus far. Very real consequences, very human, very relevant to what we're seeing in the world today, and what I think, unfortunately, we will continue to see in the next 4 years. That's all I will say on politics. Fantastic. highly recommend the series. This is where indie publishing shines, letting authors tell the stories that they want to tell, that are important to them, that they want to explore. And I feel even with Doolan's case, understand more of somebody else's experience. So Doolan is a white author writing people of color as his main characters, learning about other cultures, learning about what is important to other cultures, and trying to understand and unpack things that have happened to these cultures in real life, and then put them on the page in a emotionally devastating way. If you can't tell, I really liked it. I thought it was one of those books that really just make you think. It's not entertainment for entertainment's sake. It grips you and it forces you to look at things that are uncomfortable, and I love that when I read. The last one that I picked up for the month was The Wager by David Guerin. This is a non-fiction book about the ship called The Wager, which was a cargo ship turned warship. It was in the 18th century, 1742. This also has quite interesting repercussions from this particular book. It inspired, so one of the castaways from this inspired the movie Castaway. The story of this boat was hidden or buried for quite a long time. The author went to the island, so I think it was Cape Horn. It's like one of the most dangerous capes in the world because the winds are crazy, the seas are wild, and the author went to the cape, the island off this cape that they got shipwrecked on, to try and live there, to try and find out what those living conditions were so many years later. This was written like fiction. So it is non-fiction. They are real accounts from... It's written like fiction, but it is based on the accounts of the journals and also the public books and stuff that were created from the Wager, from the expedition, for people who ended up making it back. It is just an exploration of what humans will do in extreme circumstances, and I thought it was great. I am going to hopefully read Killers of the Flower Moon, which is also another non-fiction by this author, because I trust him to write things that I will actually retain. I definitely babbled about this one to Rachel and our housemate Jim when I finished it, because I found it so utterly fascinating. Pretty decent month for the month of June. What did you pick up? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this content, give one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.